Hello everyone, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today we are going to talk about quiz question banks. We've talked a little bit about quizzes in the past in some of our earlier sessions, like maybe even last year I think is when I maybe talked about quizzes last. But I don't know that we really focused on question banks a whole lot. So we're going to talk a little bit about those today. A little bit about myself. My name is Taylor Craig, and I'm a platforms consultant at Kineo. So what my job is I get the opportunity to travel and train many of our clients on site. I get to train lots of you guys online. I work with some standard implementations, and then I also work with all of our much larger implementations, working really closely with our solution architects, making sure that you guys are trained on any customizations that we do for you, as well as core Totara, and just making sure you're really comfortable with the solution that we've provided to you. So that's a little bit about what I do here at Kineo. A little bit about office hours in case you haven't ever joined us before, or in case you're watching the recording for the first time. What we do in office hours is I typically have about a 15-minute feature presentation on, and we make that particular part of the session available on YouTube for anyone to reference and utilize. Feel free to share those with anybody that needs them, pass those along, whatever you need to do or want to do. We are totally cool with doing that. Sometimes also we have situations where some of our clients ask some really great questions. So the last 45 minutes we have client Q&A only time, and that typically we don't post up for just anybody. But if you really enjoyed the questions, or those questions really hit home and you need to share that with someone else in your organization, feel free to ask me. I am more than happy to put those recordings out there just for you to access, and basically I'll just put it out there unlisted, and then you can share the link. That way you can have access to the full recording if those questions either answer something that you needed addressed, or something you want to share with someone in your organization. So feel free to ask for the full recording. We definitely do that. Also, guys, if you have any ideas for future office hour sessions, if there's something that you've been wanting to see or need to see, or maybe would like a little extra training on, let me know. Either shoot me an email, or sometimes I do have in those weekly emails that I send, sometimes there's a link for a survey where you can just kind of submit that information for us here and there. But feel free to shoot me an email. My email is taylor.craig@kineo.com. So today what we're talking about are quiz question banks. We're going to learn a little bit about what they are, where all they can be created, and why exactly you might use them. So to answer the first question, what are they? I hear a lot of times people refer to them as question pools. So basically that means that it's just an area where you can house a bunch of different questions, right? You can utilize them in multiple contexts. So we'll talk a little bit more about context and what I mean by that here in just a second when we look at the next slide. But that's where they can be created. They can be created in multiple different contexts. Reasons that you might use them. You would use a question bank or a question pool in order to make your life a whole lot easier, basically. You can organize those questions in a way where you can use question randomization. A lot of times people aren't familiar that question randomization is just a standard thing with Totara quiz, and it works really nicely with question banks. So that's something that allows you to do it, and then also it just kind of helps you to keep your information organized and housed nicely. So just something to keep in mind. We'll take a look at kind of all this. So when I refer to context, meaning where can question banks be created, or question pools, or question categories, I've heard people refer to them in a lot of different terminology, I suppose, but basically it's the same thing. It's a group of questions. But basically where you can create them at the site context, which is this blue box here on the outside. You can create them at the course category context. So we've got two course categories here. Imagine this blue box is my Totara site. The pink boxes are the course categories that I have on my site, so you can create them inside of the course categories. If you create them at the site level or the course category context, so think about it this way. If you do it at the site context, then you can utilize those questions in either category and all the contexts below or within. If you do course category context, say you create them here, then that means you can use it inside of these 2 courses, inside of any of these 3 quizzes. So keep that in mind. You also have the ability to create them at the course context. So the light green box, that is going to be your Totara course. That is personally where I prefer to build them. It kind of keeps it cleaner. It keeps you from crossing questions all the way across the site. Keeps too many cooks out of the kitchen, I guess I would say. But I personally prefer to create them in the course context because then that allows me to create questions or utilize the same questions in multiple quizzes within my course. And then finally, the default, where you will automatically be defaulted to, is actually at the activity context, so which is in the quiz. So you'll see here in a moment where you're able to see those. Now keep in mind, not everyone can create quiz questions at all of these different contexts. As an administrator, I can create quiz questions at any of these contexts, and I can utilize them at any of these contexts. However, that comes with a kind of a permission, right, with being a site administrator. Other roles, so for example, if I was a trainer just in this course context and maybe this course too, I would be able to create them in the course context, but not at the course category context or any higher. So it depends also, too, where I am assigned a role, which context I am assigned a role in. Because if you'll remember maybe from earlier sessions or if we've worked together in any time, there are situations where you can have roles at different contexts as well. So it all kind of depends on the permissions that you have and where you are holding those permissions. Okay, so let's actually jump into a site here. And I thought I had it pulled up, and of course I didn't. It's all right, won't take me long. And I am just going to go in here. I'm just going to go into my favorite course that you guys see me go into all the time, which is the Totara Basics course. But it's because I got a bunch of examples in here, right? So I'm going to go into my quiz area. So I've got 2 quizzes inside of this course. There are multiple ways to access question banks. So you can access them by going directly into the activity, or you will notice underneath your course administration, and again, keep in mind this is the administration block, course administration, not site administration. You can also access it here, so question bank questions, so you can access it here. So multiple places. I'm going to go back through the quiz because that's going to typically be where you're going to see it more often than not. It's where you're going to run into it more often than not. It's where you're going to be building something and be like, okay, Taylor talked about question banks once upon a time. Where is it? You'll find it probably more quickly through the quiz. So I'm going to go into the quiz. Okay, and you'll notice here that I've got some attempts, so this quiz has been attempted, but I want to take a look at the question bank specifically. So you'll see here now, looking at my administration block, you'll see at the top, because this is a contextual block, I have quiz administration at the top. But if I come down here, I also see question bank. You can click on the little folder icon, and it will depend on your theme. You may have a folder, you may have a gear, you could have a variety of different icons there. My particular theme has a folder. If I click on the folder, it's going to expand this down. It's going to say questions, categories, import, export. Okay, so that gives me these other options. I personally just like clicking on the words question bank. It takes me straight to the question bank, and I don't have to do any guessing. I don't have to think about it. Okay, so in here, we talked a minute ago about the context. As an administrator, when you click this drop-down, now it's going to call it category, select a category, because you'll see here in a moment that you can actually build categories within these, quote, contexts. So you'll see here, it's going to default for me, because this particular quiz, I've already created questions. I've already got, and the questions I'm utilizing are at the course context. Typically, however, it is going to default to the quiz specifically. So this particular quiz is called How Well Do You Know Totara? And so typically when you're creating a brand new quiz, it's going to default to that quiz level. Now again, I'm an administrator, so I see all of the contexts. I see quiz, I see course, I see category, and I also see system. Now, I want to kind of give you a disclaimer. System-level questions are not necessarily a bad thing. I've seen lots of clients do it successfully. They're pretty cool when you get them in there and you get them organized appropriately and you're utilizing it correctly. However, I've also seen clients really cause some issues for themselves because they maybe have 2, 3, 4, 5 more administrators. And one specific example that I saw years ago was a situation where they were using system-level questions, and they had about 6 or 7 administrators. And one of those administrators decided that the question bank was getting kind of messy. And so that administrator decided to go in and help everybody out and kind of reorganize stuff. In an effort to help, they actually caused a huge issue because different people were using different questions in different places, and that particular administrator didn't realize those questions were being utilized. So he was archiving questions, moving them out of the way. It was a mess. So that is a mess that you can potentially run into if you're using system-level questions. It's not necessarily something you would run into, but it's a disclaimer I like to give. So just keep that in mind if you're ever considering going that route, that all of your admins need to be on the same page when you're talking these types of questions, okay? So again, I like to use course level context, mainly because I may have a situation where I have some quiz questions that I want to use multiple times throughout my course. I may have a pre-test, I may have a post-test, maybe the exact same questions. I don't want to create those questions twice. So I'm going to build them at the course basic, I'm going to build them at the course context level. That way I can use them again in another quiz. Okay. Now you'll notice here when I select default, how well do you know Totara, if I select that, down here at the bottom, I don't have any quiz questions. I'm not seeing anything because I don't have any questions in that context. But if I select default for course basics, which is the course level, the name of this course, the short name of this course is course basics. I also have a 5. That means I have 5 questions in that bank. So you'll see here that I have all these questions. They were created by me. They were last modified by me. And this is my question bank. Okay, so you can have all different types of questions in there. Now, another thing that you can do, guys, is you can add some categorical structure to these particular question banks, right? So I have seen people get incredibly detailed. I have seen people where they go in and they have a course level main category, and then underneath that they have, these are all of my multiple choice questions for the pretest, these are all of my multiple choice questions for the midterm, these are all of my multiple choice questions for the post-test. You know, like they do it by question type even. What this leads you to be able to do is when you get into the quiz itself, so excuse me guys, one moment. Sorry about that, I had to get a drink. So what this leads you to be able to do is from within the quiz, when you are actually editing the quiz itself, I'm going to get in here and edit the quiz, you have the ability to like add in questions from the question bank. And you can also, let me see here, I'm having a brain lapse. My coffin fit made me go dumb all of a sudden. Let's click on this. I think also it's because I've got updates, or I've got attempts. Well, that's not what I wanted to do. It's probably not allowing me to add additional questions because there have been attempts, which makes sense. So that's just another kind of good point about quizzes, is you can't add additional questions once it's been attempted, which makes sense because you've got people who have attempted it, and their grade would obviously change if you wanted to add additional. So what I'm going to do here, just so that we can get an example and you can see what I'm trying to achieve here, is I am going to show you another little trick. We're going to turn editing on, and I'm going to come down here to my quizzes. I'm going to do this one. I'm going to duplicate this one. So what this is going to do is it's going to duplicate the quiz completely. So it's going to duplicate the questions. It's not actually going to create a copy of the questions since they're pulling from the course level. It's just going to have those questions in there, and it's going to have all the settings. It's just not going to have the attempts. So we should be able to do what I'm trying to get to here. Edit quiz. There we go. Here up here at the top. Sorry guys, it was hiding from me. Question bank contents. I'm going to show that. So that's a good example of what not to do. There is a show and hide button, and again, that's going to kind of depend on your theme, whether or not you'll be able to see it. And I'm going to close that down. So you'll see here default questions for course basics. So I have all these questions, and then that's the question types. So here's all of the different questions that I can add to my quiz. I already have all of those same questions in my quiz, but what I'm wanting to show you here is the ability to say add random questions from category. So what that's referring to is these categories here. So if I were to have 2 or 3 other categories in here that had different question types and different questions and all that good stuff, I could select the category, and then I could say I want to pull in 3 random questions from that particular category. So what that's going to do when I do that and utilize that feature is that is going to allow me to, it'll just pull out 3 questions. And my questions are going to be different than your questions, especially if we, of course, have more than 3 questions in our bank, right? So that is going to be one of the main reasons that you might want to utilize that. Now, I've talked a little bit about how you can have categories within these contexts. So let's talk about where you might add those and why you might add those. So really quickly, we're going to go underneath Question Bank. And we're going to click on Question Bank Categories. Now, let's look at the context that I'm in here. I'm underneath Administration, Quiz Administration. But keep in mind, just about anywhere where you see this Question Bank drop down, it's going to take you to essentially the same place. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at it. And I'm going to click on Categories. Now again, as an administrator, I'm able to see all of the different contexts. So I'm able to see the quiz that I'm within. Now if you access Question Bank from a course and not from within the quiz, you won't see this one up here at the top. And the reason you won't see this one at the top is because you're not in that context. Okay, so that's going to be one of those reasons you wouldn't see that if you're accessing Question Bank from the course versus the quiz. Okay, question categories, we've got course, Totara Course Basics, which is the name of the course, which is where I have my questions created. And then you have question categories, Learning Totara Basics, and then the system level. So I do have the ability down here to create additional categories. So I have default for Course Basics, and I'm going to name this multi-choice questions. And I'm going to add that category. You can put in category information if you want to, and just kind of give it some additional information if you want to. That's totally up to you. So I've got this one in here. You can come back in, you can edit these if you need to. You can always choose the parent. You can move it around if you need to, do any of that stuff. Add an additional, whatever you might need to do. So that's just something to keep in mind, guys. And then what you would have the ability to do from here, you can create questions specifically from there by clicking on the number of questions that are in there. So you'll see this drop down here, and you'll see them listed here. And you can build a multiple choice question out here. You can also, from within a question, as you're building questions, you can place them into the appropriate category there as well. So lots of things that you can do with question banks. Just wanted to talk in a little more detail about that today. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked and searching for some stuff there, but I think we finally found it and got the point across. I'm going to now turn the floor over to you guys. Do you have any questions? And I'm going to go ahead and pop that back up, and I'm going to pop this out. I apologize, guys. I am only using one screen today, but you may be able to see each other's questions. Feel free to ask. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will give you audio if you need to utilize the mic as well.